The sky above Earth was quiet, too quiet. No one expected what was coming. The stars were peaceful, shining in the dark of space. But deep in the galaxy, a fleet of alien ships began to move. Their mission was simple: Earth had to fall, and they would make sure of it. On Earth, life was normal. People went about their days, unaware of the danger coming from space. In the skies above, no one saw the alien ships, each one bigger than the tallest building on Earth. They were hidden by the dark of space, moving fast, ready to strike. Their weapons were powerful, designed to destroy anything in their path. In a military base in the United States, General Marcus stood looking out at the night sky. He had received strange signals the day before, but he didn't think much of it. The world had been at peace for so long, and the idea of an alien invasion seemed impossible. But now, as he looked out, he felt something in the air, an uneasy feeling that he couldn't shake. Suddenly, alarms began to blare throughout the base. The lights flashed red. Soldiers ran to their posts, and screens lit up with warnings. "General, you need to see this," said Captain Walker, rushing into the command room. Marcus turned to look at the screen. His eyes widened as he saw what the captain was pointing at. A massive fleet of alien ships, like nothing he had ever seen before, appeared on radar. The ships were big, dark, and shaped like nothing on Earth. The aliens had arrived. "We've got incoming," Marcus said. His voice was calm, but his mind raced. "Prepare for battle." The alien ships began to land in cities around the world. One by one, they descended from the sky, releasing dark clouds of smoke and dust. The people below had no idea what was happening. Some thought it was a military exercise. Others thought it was a joke. No one expected an attack like this. The first explosion shattered the silence. A ship landed in the middle of a busy city, and without warning, it opened fire. Buildings crumbled, cars exploded, and people screamed. It was chaos. The aliens wasted no time. They were here to conquer, and they didn't care about anything or anyone in their way. In the distance, a massive alien general stood on the bridge of his ship, watching as his troops landed on Earth. His eyes were cold and focused. He had seen many worlds fall before. Earth would be no different. His troops were strong, well-trained, and ready to crush anything that stood in their way. The general gave the order to attack. His soldiers, armed with advanced weapons and technology, rushed out of their ships. They were tall, their bodies covered in heavy armor. They looked like warriors from another world. The human soldiers below didn't stand a chance. At least, that's what the general thought. On the ground, Earth's military scrambled to respond. Fighter jets took off from military bases, but they were no match for the alien ships. The jets fired missiles, but the aliens dodged them with ease. It was clear that the aliens were far more advanced. Earth's weapons were like toys compared to theirs. But humans were not so easily defeated. The soldiers on the ground had something the aliens didn't expect: their will to fight. They didn't run. They didn't panic. They fought back. General Marcus watched the screen, seeing the chaos unfold. His mind raced. "We can't let them take over," he said. "We need to rally the troops. All units, prepare for defense." But it wasn't just the military fighting back. In the cities, people grabbed anything they could to protect themselves. Civilians picked up weapons, formed groups, and helped the soldiers fight. It didn't matter that they didn't have fancy armor or advanced technology. They were fighting for their homes, for their families, and they would not give up. As the fighting intensified, the alien general watched from his ship amused. He didn't think humans could put up a real fight. They were weak, he thought. They had no real chance. His soldiers would crush them, just like they had done to so many other worlds. But something strange began to happen. The humans, despite being outmatched in every way, fought like animals. They didn't stop. They didn't retreat. They kept coming, no matter how many times they were knocked down. The alien general couldn't believe his eyes. These humans weren't running. They weren't begging for mercy. They were fighting. And they were fighting hard. The general's smirk slowly faded. He realized that he had made a terrible mistake. These humans, weak as they seemed, were not like the other races he had conquered. They were something different. Something dangerous. The world had never seen anything like this. The alien invasion had come without warning, and Earth was already in chaos. But the humans weren't going to give up without a fight. Despite the overwhelming force of the aliens, they didn't run. They didn't surrender. They fought back with everything they had. In the streets of New York, soldiers ran through the wreckage, dodging blasts from alien weapons. Their uniforms were torn, their faces smeared with dirt and blood, but they didn't stop. They kept moving forward, trying to protect the people who were still hiding behind shattered buildings. General Marcus stood at the front of his command center, watching the live feed of the battle. His hands were steady, but his mind raced. He knew the aliens were stronger, faster, and better equipped. They had advanced technology that Earth couldn't even begin to understand. Yet there was something about the way the humans were fighting that gave him hope. "They won't back down," Marcus said, his voice low but filled with determination. "We have to keep pushing." In the field, Captain Walker led a small team of soldiers through the streets. They moved fast, using the environment to their advantage. They didn't have the fancy alien weapons, but they had something far more important: their will to survive. "Keep your heads down. Stay sharp," Walker shouted as his team took cover behind a wrecked car. The ground shook as another alien ship landed nearby, and the soldiers could feel the heat from its weapons. But they didn't flinch. They were ready for this. The soldiers fired back, using everything they had. Their rifles sent powerful shots into the alien troops, and for a moment, the aliens seemed stunned. These humans, who were supposed to be weak and easy to crush, were giving them a fight. They were not retreating. They were pushing forward, one step at a time. On the other side of the world, in London, people were doing the same. Civilians who had never picked up a weapon in their life were now fighting with everything they had. They grabbed whatever they could find: crowbars, baseball bats, even kitchen knives, and charged into the streets, helping soldiers and firefighters. A woman named Sarah stood on a rooftop, looking out at the chaos below. She had never thought of herself as a fighter. She was a teacher, not a soldier. But when she saw the aliens destroy her city, something inside her changed. She couldn't just hide. She couldn't sit back and wait for someone else to protect her. "We have to fight," she said to herself. She grabbed a rifle that had been left behind by a fallen soldier and joined the battle. She wasn't trained, but her hands gripped the weapon tightly, and her heart beat with a fire she had never felt before. As Sarah moved through the streets, she noticed something strange. The aliens were fast, and their weapons were deadly, but they didn't understand the humans. They didn't understand how the people of Earth would fight for their homes. They didn't understand the strength that came from being outnumbered and cornered. The aliens, for all their power, were not prepared for the fury of the human spirit. Back in the command center, General Marcus watched as his soldiers fought with everything they had. It wasn't just the trained military anymore. It was everyone. Civilians, firefighters, police officers. Everyone was standing up to the invaders. "Keep going," Marcus muttered to himself, watching the soldiers on the front lines. "We're not done yet." But as the hours passed, the aliens began to adjust. They started to fight back harder. They used their technology to disable Earth's weapons and send more troops to the ground. The humans were starting to feel the pressure. But even as the aliens advanced, they still couldn't break the human will. In one city, a group of soldiers found themselves trapped in a building, surrounded by alien forces. The enemy was closing in, their weapons ready to destroy everything in their path. But the soldiers didn't give up. They fought until their last breath, refusing to let the aliens take another inch of their land. One of the soldiers, Sergeant Johnson, stood at the front. His rifle was empty, but he still stood tall. He looked around at his team. "We don't run," he said, his voice steady. "We fight." They fought with everything they had left, pushing the aliens back inch by inch. And even though they were outgunned and outnumbered, they were pushing the invaders back, giving the rest of the humans a chance to fight. Across the world, from city to city, humans continued to fight. They didn't stop. They didn't give up. No matter how powerful the aliens were, the humans refused to bow down. They would fight, and they would protect their homes. And deep in space, the alien general watched in shock. These humans, these so-called weak creatures, were not what he had expected. They weren't running. They weren't begging for mercy. They were fighting back, and they were fighting hard. The general clenched his fists. "This won't be easy," he muttered, realizing that the humans weren't going to make it easy for him. They were strong. They were determined. And that made them far more dangerous than he could ever have imagined. The alien army was strong, and their technology was far beyond anything the humans had ever seen. But what the aliens didn't know was that humans were not just strong in body. They were strong in mind, too. They were clever, creative, and knew how to turn any situation to their advantage. And that's exactly what they did. In the ruins of a city, Captain Walker gathered his team together. His soldiers were tired, their uniforms torn, but their eyes burned with determination. The aliens had the advantage in firepower, but the humans had something they could use to win: their brains. "We can't beat them head-on, but we don't need to," Walker said, looking at his team. "We need to be smarter than them." He looked over at the broken streets and the scattered remains of alien equipment. The humans didn't have advanced weapons like the aliens, but they were quick to adapt. They had learned to use the enemy's own technology against them. Across the city, small groups of soldiers and civilians were setting up traps. It wasn't just about fighting. It was about making the aliens think they had everything under control, while secretly setting up for something bigger. In one area, a group of soldiers found an alien ship that had crashed. It was huge, with metal doors and glowing panels, unlike anything they had ever seen. The soldiers carefully moved inside, avoiding the alien patrols outside. They didn't know how the ship worked, but they didn't need to understand it fully. They just needed to disable it. Private Jones, a young soldier, pointed to a large panel on the wall. "If we cut this wire, it should make the ship go into lockdown mode. It'll confuse them." His teammate, Sergeant Ramirez, nodded. "Let's do it." With quick hands, the soldiers cut the wire. The ship's lights flickered, and the alarms began to blare. The aliens outside didn't know what was happening. Confused, they stopped moving forward, unsure of what was wrong with their ship. The humans had bought themselves more time. In another part of the city, a group of civilians had taken to the streets. They had no training, but they had plenty of ideas. Using old cars and scrap metal, they built makeshift barricades. They knew the aliens wouldn't expect them to fight, but that's exactly what they did. A woman named Sarah, the teacher-turned-fighter, had an idea. She and a few others set up a series of fake roads and decoys to trick the aliens. They used mirrors and old lights to create the illusion of military bases and tanks hidden in the distance. When the aliens followed these false signals, they found themselves walking right into a trap. "Keep it quiet. They'll follow the lights. We need to move fast," Sarah whispered as the group set the final pieces of the trap. The aliens took the bait. They moved into the area where the false signals led them, but when they arrived, they were met with a surprise. The humans had set up an ambush. The aliens found themselves surrounded by a group of soldiers hiding in the shadows. They were ready to attack. The humans didn't just use their strength to win. They used their surroundings, their wits, and their ability to adapt to any situation. They didn't have the weapons to match the aliens, but they had something better: the ability to outthink them. Meanwhile, General Marcus watched everything unfold on the screens in his command center. His soldiers were making progress, But he knew the real key to winning this war was in the humans' ability to use their environment to their advantage. "They're clever," Marcus muttered, watching as the soldiers and civilians set up more and more traps. "They're using their brains, not just their guns." At another part of the battlefield, a group of human engineers had hacked into an alien communication system. The aliens were communicating with each other, sending orders and plans through their advanced network. But the humans were listening in. They understood enough to create chaos. The engineers used the alien network to send false messages. They fed the aliens incorrect information about where their forces were positioned. The alien troops began to move to locations that didn't exist. They wasted time, and the humans gained the upper hand. Back in the city, the tide was slowly turning. The aliens were no longer confident. They had underestimated the humans. The humans' clever tricks were slowing them down, making them second-guess every move they made. The alien general, watching from his ship, grew frustrated. His soldiers were being missiled, and his technology was being sabotaged. His advanced weapons, which had once seemed unbeatable, were now being used against him. He hadn't expected the humans to fight this way. He had thought they were primitive, easy to control, but now he saw that they were not just strong. They were smart. "Everything they do, it's unpredictable," the general muttered. "They don't play by the rules. These humans, they think." He knew he had to change his strategy, but he couldn't deny it. The humans were starting to win. And it wasn't just because of their weapons. It was because they could outsmart him. The battle for Earth had been raging for days, but the aliens were starting to realize something they hadn't expected. No matter how hard they fought, no matter how many cities they destroyed, the humans just kept coming. They were relentless. On the ground, human soldiers and civilians worked together, using every trick they had learned. They didn't stop, even when the odds seemed impossible. Their strength was no longer just in their weapons. It was in their spirit. They would never give up. In a small village, Sergeant Ramirez led his team through the broken streets. The air was thick with smoke, and the sound of explosions echoed in the distance. The aliens had pushed the humans back time and time again, but each time, the humans came back stronger. "Move, move, move," Ramirez shouted as his team advanced. The aliens were regrouping, but the humans weren't afraid. They had learned from every battle, becoming better and better with each fight. One of Ramirez's soldiers, Private Johnson, was the first to spot the alien patrol. The aliens were tough, but they didn't expect the humans to be so brave. Johnson signaled to the team, and within moments, the humans were on the move. They didn't wait for orders. They didn't hesitate. They attacked. The alien patrol never saw them coming. The humans were quick, silent, and deadly. They took out the first few aliens before they even had a chance to react. The rest of the patrol scattered, but the humans kept pushing forward, never giving them a chance to regroup. "We've got them on the run," Ramirez said with a smile. He was tired, his body aching from days of fighting, but he knew they had the upper hand. "Keep pushing, don't stop." But as the humans advanced, the aliens were quick to retaliate. They'd brought in their strongest forces, sending in massive alien war machines that could crush anything in their path. The humans knew they were outmatched, but they didn't hesitate. They didn't back down. At the same time, in a nearby city, Captain Walker and his team were taking on an alien warship. The ship had landed on the outskirts of the city, and it was heavily guarded, but the humans had a plan. They knew they couldn't take it head-on, but they didn't need to. "Set the charges," Walker ordered. His team placed explosive devices on the warship's outer walls, carefully avoiding detection. They didn't have the firepower to take the ship down in a direct fight, but they had something the aliens didn't expect: surprise. As they finished planting the last charge, Walker looked around. His team was exhausted, but they were ready. "This is it," he said. "On my signal." They set the timer, and when it went off, the explosion was massive. The warship shook, its outer armor blasted apart. The aliens inside panicked, trying to repair the damage. But the humans were already inside. They stormed the ship, fighting every step of the way. The aliens fought back, but the humans were relentless. They didn't stop, even when they were outnumbered. Every hallway was a battle, but the humans kept pushing forward. They cleared the ship room by room, never giving the aliens a chance to recover. Outside, more alien forces were on the way. The battle was far from over. But the humans refused to quit. They fought with everything they had left. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about sending a message. The aliens had thought they could crush humanity easily. They had thought the humans would fall to their knees in fear, but they were wrong. In the skies above, the alien general watched his forces lose ground. His army had been strong, but the humans just wouldn't give up. He had expected them to fold, to break under the pressure. Instead, they fought harder. They fought smarter. And now his forces were starting to crumble. "They're relentless," the general muttered, staring at the screens in his ship. "I didn't expect this." The general's confidence was fading. He had underestimated the humans. They were not just fighting for their lives. They were fighting for their future. The humans had an endless will to survive, and that made them more dangerous than any weapon the aliens could bring. On the ground, the humans didn't stop. They didn't take a break. Even as they faced defeat after defeat, they kept pushing forward. They were tired, their bodies bruised and broken, but they would never give up. It didn't matter how many aliens they faced. It didn't matter how many times they were knocked down. They would keep getting back up. Back in the city, Sergeant Ramirez and his team fought side by side with civilians, helping them take back their homes. The humans were no longer afraid. They knew that if they wanted to survive, they had to fight with everything they had. And that was exactly what they were doing. "Keep fighting," Ramirez yelled, his voice hoarse from days of shouting orders. "We're not done yet. We're not giving up." And they didn't. They wouldn't stop. They couldn't. The alien forces may have been powerful, but the humans were even more powerful in their determination. The fight was far from over. But one thing was clear. The aliens had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated the human spirit. The alien army had brought their most advanced technology to Earth, confident that it would give them the victory they sought. But as the battle raged on, something unexpected began to happen. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were learning how to break the alien tech. It started with small things. The aliens had advanced weapons that could melt through steel in seconds, and ships that could fly faster than any human craft. But the humans had something the aliens didn't: the ability to adapt. They didn't understand everything about the alien technology, but they didn't need to. They just needed to figure out how to break it. Captain Walker's team had been given the task of disabling an alien weapon that had been wreaking havoc in the city. The weapon was massive, with a huge cannon capable of leveling entire buildings. It was a terrifying sight, and it had already destroyed half of the city. "We can't let this thing keep firing," Walker said, looking at the giant cannon in the distance. The alien troops were guarding it, but Walker and his team had an idea. "Do you remember the signals we intercepted last week?" Sergeant Ramirez asked. He was holding up a small device they had built out of spare parts. It looked simple, but it had already done wonders against the alien communication systems. Walker nodded. "I think I know what you're getting at." Using the device, Ramirez began to hack into the alien system. The small device emitted a pulse that jammed the aliens' communication network. It wasn't much, but it was enough to create a moment of confusion among the aliens. They couldn't communicate with each other, and their weapons started to malfunction. As the alien forces scrambled to fix their systems, Walker and his team moved in. They planted explosives around the massive cannon and set the timer. "There's no turning back now," Walker muttered as he hit the switch. The explosion rocked the ground, sending shockwaves through the air. The cannon was disabled, and the aliens were left scrambling. At the same time, across the city, another group of soldiers had been working on a different kind of alien technology. The aliens had brought strange flying machines that could move at incredible speeds. These ships were almost impossible to catch, and they had been bombing human positions from above. But the humans had noticed something. The ships had a pattern to their movements. They weren't as random as they seemed. If the humans could figure out that pattern, they might be able to take them down. Private Johnson had an idea. He had been studying the alien ships' movements for hours, watching the way they flew and the way they dodged attacks. He noticed that they always followed the same flight path. They weren't unpredictable at all. They were just too fast for the humans to catch. "Give me 5 minutes," Johnson said to his team. They set up a trap. They placed several decoy targets on the ground, hoping to lure the alien ships into the same flight path. Then, using a modified missile launcher, they aimed at the incoming ships. The trick was simple. Wait for the right moment and launch. When the alien ships came into range, Johnson fired the missile. The trap worked. The missile hit its target, taking down one of the alien ships. It crashed to the ground with a loud bang, and the humans cheered. The aliens were beginning to realize that their tech was not as unstoppable as they had thought. Their weapons were powerful, but they could be hacked, jammed, and taken down. Their ships were fast, but they weren't invincible. Meanwhile, in the command center, General Marcus watched the humans' progress. His eyes narrowed as he saw the aliens' advanced tech failing. The humans had figured out how to neutralize it. It was both impressive and terrifying. "They're using our own tech against us," the general said, his voice filled with disbelief. This shouldn't be possible. The alien general, far from home, was watching the same footage. He had been certain that their technology would crush the humans. But the humans were doing the impossible. They were breaking their weapons, shutting down their ships, and even sabotaging their own communication systems. "How are they doing this?" the alien general asked, his voice shaking with anger. "We gave them no chance to learn." But the humans were proving that they didn't need to understand everything about the alien technology. They just needed to understand how to use it against them. They had adapted, and now they were beating the aliens at their own game. In another part of the city, Sarah and her team had found an alien energy core. It was a massive device that powered many of the alien machines, and it seemed impossible to disable. But Sarah didn't hesitate. She had seen the damage the energy core had caused to the city, and she knew it had to be stopped. "Let's get to work," she said, her eyes focused on the core. They didn't have much time before the aliens realized what was happening. Using explosives and a few hacked alien tools, the humans worked quickly. The aliens had thought their energy core was indestructible, but once again, the humans proved them wrong. With a final blast, the core was shut down, and the aliens were left without power. The aliens' tech was not as unstoppable as they had believed, and the humans weren't just fighting back. They were winning. The battle had been long, and the humans were tired. But Commander Elena Hayes wasn't ready to give up. She stood tall, looking out over the city where the fight had been fierce, and her voice carried the strength of someone who had led her troops through hell and back. Today, they were on the verge of something bigger, something the aliens had never expected. The humans had taken back parts of the city, but there was still so much more to do. The alien forces were powerful, and they didn't give up easily. But Commander Hayes knew something the aliens didn't. They had underestimated the humans, thinking they were weak. Now, the aliens would find out just how wrong they were. She walked across the battlefield, her soldiers watching her every step. Some were wounded, others were tired, but none of them had given up. They had seen their friends fall, watched cities burn, and fought with every ounce of strength they had. But through it all, they had kept fighting. They were human, and that meant something. Hayes stopped in front of a group of soldiers huddled behind a barricade. She could see the exhaustion in their eyes, the weight of the battle on their shoulders. But there was also something else, something stronger. A fire, a spark that refused to be extinguished. She raised her hand, and the soldiers stood at attention. "Listen to me," Hayes began, her voice firm, but filled with the passion of someone who knew how much was at stake. "We've come a long way. Every time we were pushed down, we got back up. Every time the aliens thought they had us beat, we came back harder. And we will keep coming back until they know one thing for sure: they cannot defeat us." The soldiers nodded. They had heard those words before, but hearing them from their commander gave them strength. They knew she wasn't just talking. She had led them through every battle, through every loss, and she had never once given up on them. She believed in them. Hayes looked around at her soldiers. "The aliens thought we were nothing. They thought we were just a small, weak species they could crush easily. But what they don't understand is that we don't give up. We don't break. We fight for each other. And no matter how many of us fall, there will always be more of us ready to stand up." She walked to the front of the barricade, looking toward the alien forces that were regrouping in the distance. Their ships hovered in the sky, and their soldiers moved in tight formations, preparing for another assault. "We're about to show them something they've never seen before," she continued. "We are more than just soldiers. We are humanity, and they will learn that the hard way." One of the soldiers, Private Davis, spoke up. "Commander, are we really ready for this? They have so much power. What if we lose?" Hayes turned to face him, her eyes hard but full of determination. "If we lose together. But we will not lose. We fight with everything we have, because we are not just fighting for our lives. We are fighting for our future. We fight for Earth. We fight for the people we love, and for everyone who believes in us." Her words hit hard. Davis nodded, a renewed fire in his eyes. He wasn't the only one feeling it. Around him, the soldiers straightened their backs, their hands gripping their weapons with new purpose. They had seen the aliens' strength, but now they were starting to see their own. Hayes turned and addressed the entire group, her voice ringing out. "This isn't just a battle for survival. This is a battle to show the galaxy what humanity is made of. They thought they could wipe us out with their advanced tech. They thought we would surrender to their power. But they were wrong. This fight is not over. We are the ones who will decide when it ends." As the words left her mouth, the ground shook. The aliens were preparing for their final push. Their ships moved into position, and the sky darkened with their presence. But the humans weren't afraid. They were ready. "We've been through worse," Hayes said, stepping back from the soldiers. "We've lost friends, lost cities, but we've also learned. We've adapted. And now we fight with everything we have. Not just for Earth, but for every human who's ever lived. We fight for our future. For our children." With one final nod, Hayes turned to her soldiers, who were already moving into position. The battle was about to intensify, but the humans knew something that the aliens still didn't. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for everything that made them human: their will, their hope, and their unbreakable spirit. As the alien forces began their assault, Commander Hayes stood tall, her eyes filled with fierce determination. She knew what was at stake. She knew the risk. But there was no fear in her heart. She had seen too many humans rise in the face of danger. She had seen the strength of humanity, and it was unstoppable. "Let's show them what happens when you mess with humanity," she said, her voice cold but powerful. "Let's show them what it means to face the human spirit." And with that, the battle raged on. The humans, led by their commander's words, charged forward into the fray, knowing that no matter what came next, they would fight until the very end. The battle was nearing its peak. The air was thick with smoke, the ground was littered with debris, and the sounds of war echoed across the land. But in the midst of all the chaos, one thing was clear: the humans were winning. Commander Elena Hayes stood at the front, her eyes focused on the alien forces that were now retreating. The enemy had thrown everything they had at Earth. They had sent their most advanced weapons, their deadliest soldiers, and their strongest ships. But none of it was enough. The humans had learned, adapted, and fought back with everything they had. Their resilience, their will to survive, had carried them through every obstacle, every loss, and every challenge. Now the aliens were realizing the truth. They had underestimated humanity. "Push them back," Hayes shouted, her voice cutting through the noise of the battlefield. Her soldiers, now more determined than ever, surged forward. Every step they took was a step closer to victory. The aliens tried to regroup, but their forces were scattered. They had relied too much on their technology, thinking it would give them control. But the humans had found their weaknesses. Their weapons were no match for the ingenuity and determination of the human spirit. The alien ships that had once soared across the sky now began to fall one by one. The humans, using their own weapons and tactics, had figured out how to disable the ships. With each explosion in the sky, the humans cheered, knowing that they were one step closer to ending the invasion. "Keep pushing," Sergeant Ramirez shouted to his squad. He and his team were advancing on the alien stronghold, pushing through the alien defenses with unyielding force. The aliens had thought their stronghold was impregnable, but the humans were proving them wrong. They had learned how to fight on the ground and in the skies, using the aliens' own technology against them. Private Johnson, who had once doubted the humans' chances of winning, was now at the front, leading the charge. He had seen his friends fall in battle, but now he was filled with a renewed sense of purpose. "We're not just fighting for Earth," he thought. "We're fighting for everyone who believes in us." The alien general, watching the battle unfold from his command ship, could hardly believe what he was seeing. His forces were retreating, his technology failing, and the humans were pushing forward like a relentless tide. His soldiers were no longer fighting with the same strength they had before. Fear was starting to spread through their ranks. "How is this possible?" the general muttered, staring at the screens in disbelief. "We were supposed to crush them." But the truth was, the humans had never been as weak as the aliens had thought. The alien general had underestimated their strength, their creativity, and their refusal to give up. And now he was witnessing the result of that mistake. "Commander," one of Hayes's officers called out, pulling her attention back to the battlefield. "The aliens are retreating. They can't hold out much longer." Hayes nodded. She had known this moment would come. The aliens might have had the power, but they didn't have the heart the humans did. The humans had fought for every inch of land, for every life they could save, and for their future. Now, that fight was paying off. "Get the word out to the other units," Hayes ordered. "We're finishing this today." The humans surged forward once more, their weapons blazing, their spirits unbreakable. The aliens, who had once seemed so powerful, were now on the defensive. Their ships were falling from the sky, their ground forces were retreating, and their strongholds were being overtaken. Back on Earth, the civilians who had been hiding in shelters began to emerge. They had watched in fear as the battle raged on, but now they could see the tide had turned. The humans were winning. Families embraced, tears in their eyes. The streets, once filled with fear and destruction, were now alive with hope. Earth was not lost. Humanity had fought back, and they had won. As the last of the alien ships fell, the humans let out a cheer that echoed across the battlefield. It was the sound of victory, the sound of a people who had refused to be defeated. Commander Hayes, standing tall at the front of the charge, looked around at her soldiers. They had done it. They had beaten the invaders. "We did it," Hayes said, her voice filled with pride and relief. "We won." The humans had not only defended their home, they had sent a message to the galaxy. The aliens had come to Earth thinking they could take it, but they had underestimated the strength of humanity. They had underestimated the power of the human spirit. The Earth had been saved. The aliens had been defeated, and the humans had shown the universe that they were not just survivors. They were warriors. They were a force that would not be easily beaten. Commander Hayes looked at the sky, now clear of alien ships. The battle was over, but the war had changed something in her. The humans had learned what they were truly capable of, and she knew that no matter what came next, they would always fight for their future.